Good evening, everyone. I'm Paul Kegabine with the Garland County Library, and tonight's program was booked by the Garland County Master Gardeners as part of their virtual Know It to Grow It series. And the Master Gardeners have recruited Jerry Butler of the Garland County Audubon Society tonight to present to you about the Christmas bird count. So whether you're going to participate in the count or not, you're going to learn a lot about how you can get in the bird observation in your own backyard. First of all, Mr. Butler wanted to make sure I give a special acknowledgement to a couple of people up front. And that includes Judy Dare of the Garland County Master Gardeners and Mary Lynch of the Garland County Audubon Society. You can learn more about the Audubon Society at gcasbirds.org. And with that, before we switch over to Mr. Butler's presentation, I'm going to first introduce Judy Dare, the chairwoman of the Know It to Grow It Committee of the Garland County Master Gardeners, who has some information she would like to share. So, hello, Judy. Always a pleasure.
Hi, Paul. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining tonight. I've got notes, so pardon me. But tonight we're going to hear all about the Christmas bird count. But as you know, I always have some announcements before we start. Though we can't meet in person, virtual learning is just incredible. Our All About Fall program last month with Minnie Sheeler drew over 350 views. So it's wonderful that we can do this together until we can meet in person again, and I'm so glad that you're joining us. A little plug for the Garland County Master Gardener. We have a brand new cookbook out, and it's all about cooking with herbs, and it's a beautiful little cookbook. It's available for $20 and at the Garland County Extension Service. So that's at 238 on Woodbine Street. They're going to be available this week, coming week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and Christmas week, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Now, the proceeds for these books help us go to our beautification and education programs in Garland County, and we appreciate anything you can do to give them as gifts and enjoy them. Tonight, we're going to spice things up a little bit. You know, we always had door prizes at the library, so we're going to have door prizes again. So what we're going to do is this. Mr. Butler's presentation will be in 4 segments. After the first segment, we're going to have a question and answer period. So the first 3 people who ask a question are going to get a door prize. These door prizes will all be the same, so no need to worry about getting the best one or not. But they will be available this week, well, for the coming weeks, Tuesday through Thursday at the library. All you've got to do is go and ask for your Know It to Grow It door prize, and they'll give you your bag. So on to the program. A lot of us may remember an old song that went, "Let me tell you about the birds and the bees and the flowers and the trees." Well, that's really what ecology is all about. And one of these, just having one of these parts gone would be devastating to our ecology. So Jerry is going to talk about one of the main support systems of our ecology, the birds. And so Jerry is very interesting. He's been around the world. He's visited all 50 states, but he really started bird watching about 15 years ago when a friend of his, who is an internationally known photographer, and of course we all have a friend like that, asked him to go find the ivory-billed woodpecker with him. Well, they searched for 2 weeks and did not get a photograph of the woodpecker, but Jerry hung up his fishing pole after that and became an avid birder. He's birded in 15 different states and Mexico, and has seen 400 species of birds, which I think is amazing. He thinks that if you would just participate in the Christmas bird count, it'll get you all hooked about birds, and that's a good thing. It'll give us something to do this winter. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Mr. Jerry Butler, President of the Garland County Audubon Society. Thank you all.
Thank you, Judy. Hello there. I think we're living in a great time. You know, someday you're going to say, or somebody's going to ask you, well, where were you on the day they released the vaccine for the COVID virus? And you're going to say, well, I was in a meeting of the library and I was doing my part of science too, because today we're going to be talking about the greatest and the largest citizen science-based program in the world, the Christmas bird count. Because the Christmas bird count involves people all over the world going out, counting birds, and creating a database so that we can understand about the health of our birds and how many birds we have and where they're staying and what they're doing and how healthy our bird population is. And I'm so pleased that you've decided to do something associated with that. Now, there's another person older than me. Now, I know when you look at me and you see my gray hair and how I shake and act so old, there's another guy that is older than I am, and he's done a little talk about the Christmas bird count, and he's a better job of introducing it than I can. And so Paul Kegabine's going to show us a little video and tell you some general information about the Christmas bird count and its history. So Paul, if you'd show that video now.
Well, my name is Chandler Robbins, and I'm 94 years old. I worked for 60 years for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and U.S. Geological Survey doing work on birds, primarily migratory birds. If I seem to be distracted at any time, it's because something flew by that I was interested in. Actually, I've, as of this year, participated in 412 Christmas counts. I was just watching a black vulture going by. Christmas counts started in the year 1900 by a gentleman at the American Museum of Natural History by the name of Frank Chapman. There was at that time a practice of people having competitions on Christmas Day, going out to not observe wildlife, but to go out with a gun and see what they could bring back as trophies. Well, Dr. Chapman didn't like that idea. He thought that maybe we can use the manpower resource for something useful, like counting birds in a certain area, reporting the details of the count, and build up a huge database so that we could find out what's going on in the world around us. He would take any opportunity to do what he can to protect wildlife. Sorry, bird went by. If we did not have Christmas counts from the early years, we would have no firm grasp on what's happened to the bird populations over these years, because a lot of the changes take place gradually. There's 14 species we've had so far. By participating in something like the Christmas bird count and realizing you're doing it simultaneously with thousands of other people.
What's he saying?
That's a fish crow.
Okay. That's the guy who was hearing earlier that sounded like a duck.
You can't help but begin to develop some feeling for the wildlife you're observing. So you don't have to be an expert, you don't have to have a professional degree. It's worthwhile because it contributes to a national, international database, and because it's good health-wise too. Actually known people from every year of the Christmas bird count. Made a lot of friends that way.
Okay. Now that man he has done more than 120 bird counts. I've done about 40 myself, doing 4 or 5 each year for a while. And the Christmas bird count this year is a little bit different because of COVID. Normally, we 7 or 8 of us might load up in a car or a van and drive through an area and count the birds. But this year we can't do that. So what we're going to do this year is something that we've always done, but we're going to have to be a little more dependent on it. And that is, we're going to have to ask people to go from their houses and look out their back windows and count birds in their yard. Now, the way the Christmas bird count works is that we have circles. Now, some of you I know don't know me, but you may have seen me in the city of Hot Springs this year because I work the census. Now, the census that we had this year, the 2020 census that the Census Bureau did, was kind of like a count. The Census Bureau tried to count all the people. Now, the census of the people and the bird count are different. The census tried to count everybody in the United States, count everybody only one time. The bird count is not like that. And the census tries to count everybody, but the bird counts just tries to take a sample. We're just trying to take a photograph of the birds as it is in one time. We'll never be able to count all the birds all over the state of Arkansas or in the city of Hot Springs. The best we can hope is to just sort of get a feel for how many birds there are. Imagine that if you went out just in your yard this year on December the 24th, and you counted all the birds you could see in your yard. And next year you did the same, and next year you did the same, and you did that every year. And then your children did that, and your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren did that from your house. And you look through those numbers for all those hundreds of years that would be, you would have a good feel for what the bird populations were doing in your yard, in your community. That's what the Christmas bird count is. It just tries to find, we look at birds the same way in the same place year after year after year, and we learn something. It's like a snapshot in time. And that's what we're trying to do. And that's what we're hoping you can do. You're collecting data. Now we won't analyze that data, or you won't, but we'll pass that data on to ornithologists and scientists who will look at that data. And after we count, a few months after we count and you send your numbers, we'll get a report, and you can compare the numbers in Garland County to the numbers in some other counties where they're counting, or some other count circles. Now, one of the things that I hope you see this, can you see that map? This is a, whoops, can tell me, Aaron, when they can see that. Okay, that's a map that has a circle. The center of that circle is in downtown Hot Springs in front of Bathhouse Road, and it's a 15-mile, the circle with 15-mile diameter. And that circle is divided up into several areas, and people will go and drive around in those areas. But there will also be people who live inside that count circle who will be counting as feeder counters. And today we're going to be talking about how to be a feeder counter. And there are also feeder counters in Hot Springs Village, and there's feeder counters that are going to be in Arkadelphia, Arkansas, and there are feeder counters that are going to be needing to be done in 20 3 other count circles all over the state of Arkansas. And if you are living inside one of those count circles, then you can participate in the Christmas bird count. Even if you're not in one of those count circles, you can participate this way. You can count in your neighborhood, and you can learn how it's been done. And you can submit your information through another program known as eBird, which is an electronic database that can be done not just on Christmas, but any day of the year. And I don't have time to explain all of that today, but that's still useful information. And if you'll collect that information, and perhaps later through an email or something, that you can contact me and you can learn more about that on the eBird website. So I wanted to talk to you about count circles. Now, in the Garland County, the count circle in the city of Hot Springs, we're going to be counting on December the 20th. Hot Springs Village is going to be counting on December the 14th. And Arkadelphia is going to be counting on December the 19th. And there is, on the Garland County Library, there's contact information of the people who are conducting those accounts, and you can send your data to them, and we'll talk about that as we go on. But right now, I'm wondering if there are any questions. I'm going to be dividing my presentation into 4 segments. We've reached the end of the first segment, and if you have any questions, if you'd like to ask those questions, I'd like to entertain them now, and then later, if those questions occur to you, Paul, you might inform them about how to submit questions.
Yeah, absolutely. If you are logged into your Facebook account and are watching live, you can just post a comment and it'll go straight to me, and I'll ask it as soon as Jerry's taking questions. Right now, though, you did show that map earlier, but I'm going to put it on the screen right here. So if anyone after this video you want to go back and watch, you can pause this and take a screenshot so you'll have access to that map that Jerry was holding up earlier. All right. We did just get a live question from Diana. When will Fountain Lake count?
Well, there's not a count circle for Fountain Lake per se. The Fountain Lake area would count probably with the village. And you can contact Barbara Baker through the Hot Springs Village Audubon Society. Their website, I think, is hsvbirds.org, and you could count with them, I guess.
We also received a question in advance from Ed, who says, I understand the bird count has been conducted for 120 years. How long has it been going on in Hot Springs?
It's been going on about 12 years in Hot Springs. It's been interrupted a couple of times during that for bad weather, and one year the national park actually is in charge of the count here in Hot Springs, not the Audubon Society. And a couple of years ago, when the government shut down, they couldn't conduct it. And it was still conducted, but it was sort of abbreviated. But 12 years.
All right, thank you. All right, so if anyone else has any questions to ask during future segments, I'll be sure to ask those. All right, Jerry, are you ready to move on to the second? Actually, hold that thought. We did just get another one. Gary says, do you count the same birds over and over that keep coming to your feeder?
Okay, I'll address that in the next segment. That's a good question. It's an important consideration. We're going to talk about feeder counters. And I'd like for you to imagine that you're on the feed, you're at your feeder on the count day and you're ready to count. In order to participate, you need to have to dedicate at least 15 minutes. Most people use more time than that, but you should observe for 15 minutes or more at your counter, at your feeder. Now, you can count from your feeder, but you could also step outside your door and count birds in the front yard or birds that you might see that are not at your feeder as well. Essentially, what you do is you count each species that you see and how many of that species that you see at one time. And in answer to that question that was asked, let us say that when you first start looking, you see 2 chickadees on your feeder. One of them flies away and then it comes back. Well, you still only seen 2, but then they later both fly away and they come, and 2 more come back. You don't know whether that's the same 2 chickadees or different chickadees. So you just count the most chickadees you see at any one time during the count day. So you would only count that chickadee twice. Or the same thing would be true with titmice or any other species of bird that you would see. Now, one difference might be with the cardinals. Let's notice that you see 2 cardinals. Now, you can tell the difference between a male and a female cardinal because the male cardinal is very bright red, and the female cardinal is this lovely, more subdued, grayish, pinkish color, but they both have the same shape in the crown and they can be easily identified. So I think it's a good idea to keep a count of both the male and the female. And that way you would see more of 2 species because you wouldn't consider them being seen twice, but you would consider them as seeing a different bird. So if you'd seen 3 males and then you later saw 2 females, you wouldn't consider them 3. You would have said you would have seen 5 altogether. So that's the way that you handle that. Now, just for practice sake, we're going to watch a little video now that this is a remarkable video, and I'd like for you to kind of practice on this video. And when we watch this video, now you probably won't see birds in your backyard like this, but try to count the birds in this and tell me how you do it. So, Paul, if you'd show us the feeding frenzy video. Now, I hope you can see that. Is that a full screen for them, Paul?
It should be. If anyone has any issues, just drop a comment.
Now, are they going to be able to hear me?
Yes, Jerry, they can hear.
Okay, now here you'll see there are a lot of birds on this feeder, and you can see beyond the feeder, and right there's a blue jay on the main feeder there, and there comes a house sparrow, and there you see a cardinal, and over on the left is a sock hanging down. Now you can't really see those distinctively, I don't imagine, but at one point there are about 8 small birds on there, and most of those are goldfinches. So you would count goldfinches there. Now, one thing you'll discover is you can't count 2 species at one time. So you just kind of have to sort of focus on birds, one species at a time. So right now we're looking at 2 goldfinches on the feeder and about 4 over there on that sock. And if you look up on the upper right hand, I see 2 male cardinals. One of them just flipped away over there and one down there. And there's a female cardinal and there's a finch. And oh, lo and behold, there's a red-bellied woodpecker at that suet feeder on the right. So as you see these, you'd be writing their names down and making a record of what you're seeing. And it's a busy task when a bird feeder is this full, but it's an interesting task indeed. And only occasionally will a feeder be inundated by this many birds. But if you can call this video up on your computer, it's called Winter Feeding Frenzy, and you could probably get a larger screen and you could start it and stop it, and you could get a good look. Almost all of the birds that are in this particular video are here in Hot Springs, and they're all winter birds that we would see here. I might say that there's a bird that right there was on our left is the little chickadee, the little white bird with a dark cap on it. In the north and in your field guides, there one was, they call those a black cap chickadee. But in our area, they look just alike, but it's the Carolina chickadee. And so you might want to learn that. But if you just put chickadee down on your list, the compilers will know what bird to consider that to be. Okay, thank you, Paul. I think we've had enough of that. You might want to go back to that video sometime, though, and look at it. Now, another thing I want you to see is you need to know what birds are you apt to see at your feeder. What are you going to see? Well, there's a lot of birds in the world. There are about 9,000 species of birds. Let's wait on that just a minute, Paul. There are about 9,000 species of birds in the world. I don't know them all. I wouldn't recognize them all. I suspect you wouldn't either. But we're fortunate in that only about 320 of them are in Arkansas, and in the winter there are fewer than that. And usually, if the ones that are here in the winter are even less than that. And on most Christmas bird counts, we only see a little more than 100. And in your backyard, you're only going to have about 30 or 40. So if you're new to birding, you only need to learn 30 or 40 birds. And if you're anxious about not being able to identify them, don't be anxious. And even if you see a bird and you can't identify it, that's all right, because on the Christmas bird count, you just count the birds that you see that you can identify them. And if you don't get a good look at them and you can't identify them, then you don't count them. And last year we had some novice people on the Christmas bird count, and they came to me and they said, well, I didn't get very many birds. That's good scientific information. We need to know that there were no birds in certain places. And just like Edison, when he was trying to discover the light bulb, he tried a lot of things and didn't collect any data. It didn't work. Negative information is good scientific information. And so don't be concerned about that. just tell us what you know and what you saw, and collect that data, submit that data. And as you increase your knowledge and as you become a better scientist, then you'll get stronger information and more reliable information and produce better scientific information. There's Paul, we have the sheet of paper that has the list of birds. Could we put up that?
I can share the link to that in the
Okay.
comment section.
I'll just hold it up. Paul has a link to this. This is a list of birds. This is a list of birds that I've made out. And this list is an alphabetical list of about 40 birds that you're most apt to see. And I'll just kind of read off to you what some of them are. There's the red-winged blackbird, the bluebird, the northern cardinal, the chickadee, the American crow, the mourning dove, the bald eagle. Those are some of the birds. Most of those birds, many people would recognize. And they kind of narrow the field for you. And then there's another bird, and there's another list that Paul has the link that he can give to you. And this are the birds of Hot Springs Village. This is what we call a checklist. This tells you not what birds are just here at Christmas time, but birds that are here in the springtime, and birds that are here in the fall, and birds that are here in the summer. And it's more complete list, and it's not listed alphabetically. It lists them what we call taxonomy. So all of the herons and all of the ducks and all the songbirds and all the woodpeckers are grouped together, and you can look in there and you can see and you can learn a little bit about migration, and you can learn a little bit about the seasonal variations in birds. And so those lists will be helpful to you when you're trying to identify birds. Paul has another video now that he's going to show us. And this is a video that's taken not in our area, but it's a springtime video rather than a winter video. And if you wanted to do a migration count, these are some birds that you might see. So Paul, show that one for us. There you see the Baltimore Oriole. We have that in Hot Springs on the feeder. And over on the left, you see on that feeder, there is a rose-breasted grosbeak, and a male and a female. And in the back, it looks like there's a rose-breasted grosbeak over there too. Are they getting sound on that, Paul?
Yes, sir, they should be.
And you may be hearing some sounds of the birds there. And there you see the female oriole going down to eat. I think they've put grape jelly on that feeder, and she's eating grape jelly out of there. And that little bird with that looks like its head's been dipped in strawberry juice is the finch. And that behind it is a blue jay. And in the spring, we have these birds, but you're not apt to see them on the Christmas bird count. And if you wanted to try your hand at counting birds, this one would be a little easier to do. And this is also a YouTube video, and it's called, I forget the name of it. It's called Spring Paul, do you remember what it's called?
It is called Spring Fleeing with Baltimore Orioles, and I'm going to share this video in the comments,
Okay.
and we've done that with the other one as well.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
After the program, we can probably follow up with a compilation of all the links and videos you shared to make them easy to find for everyone.
Good. This gorgeous bird that's on there now is the rose-breasted grosbeak. It's many people's favorite songbird, and it's here for a couple of weeks in the spring and a few days in the fall. We see them. And in a minute, we're going to see a bird. I think we have enough time to see it. There's the male again. We'll probably not watch any more of that, but here in just a minute, if you're watching this by yourself, you'll see a big blue-gray catbird come and land on there. We have the blue-gray catbird here in Hot Springs in both the winter and the summer. You can sometimes see it. So, Paul, we can end this for now. If you have any questions about these birds, then, or maybe some questions about identifying birds, we could entertain some questions about that.
All right. We received a few questions earlier on that you might have covered a bit, but you may have something else to say about these questions. Joel asked, do we count species numbers how much time during the day?
Yes, keep count of how much time you've spent watching the birds, and don't worry about keeping the species count as you're going, but at the end of the day, record how many species you have seen and how many of each species that you saw.
And Chris asked, should we stick to the backyard or can we move around our sector of the circle?
If you didn't move too far, the problem with moving around your sector is that other people will be in your sector. They will know not to count in your yard, in your immediate environment. But if you count all up and down your street and they count all up and down your street, we run the risk of double counting. So it would be best if you counted just at your house. But if you wanted to get out on your street on another day and count and submit those through eBird, not on the count day, then that would be the way to do that.
And about how much time did you say people should spend a day counting?
At least 15 minutes. Spend at least 15 minutes. But you could spend as much time as you want to after that. Typically, when I do a count, I spend about 8 or 9 hours. Wow. And if you start before it's daylight, you need to keep that time separately. Now, you can't see any birds to speak of at night, but you could listen for owls. And if you keep that time separately, so maybe before the day started, you might step outside your back door and listen for maybe 20 minutes and listen. And if you heard an owl, you might just write that down. Now, you could count the birds that you just hear if you didn't see them. Now, not many people know all the bird songs, but most people know a crow when they hear one. You hear the bird going, caw, caw, that's a crow. So count the crow. Or if you step outside and you hear an owl go, whoo, 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 well, that's a barred owl. You could count that. And sometimes you could hear one barred owl over to your right and another one over to your left. They'll be talking to one another, and you could count 2 barred owls. And so you could pick up a couple of species that way. And if you don't know those calls, you can get on Merlin, and you can hear those calls, and you can learn them. They're not hard to learn at all.
What time of day would you say is best for the average person to participate?
Well, birds are out more of the morning and of the evening than up in the middle of the day. And when it's real windy outside, it's hard to find birds.
Got a question from email from Micah. Should I count birds that fly over my yard but don't land?
Yes, you do. And I would encourage you, when you're looking at your feeder, to look up in the sky. You'll often see vultures. Now, people in Arkansas call them buzzards, but they're really vultures. And if you see a vulture, write that down, even if they don't land. Or you might hear a flock of Canada geese fly over your house. You could count those. Yes, they don't land, you still count them.
Anne has a comment, and I completely agree. You were good at those bird calls, Jerry.
Thank you. I hope the birds think that.
Diana asks, if I put grape jelly out, will different birds come to our feeder? I generally have peanuts and sunflower seeds out.
Well, yes, they will, but I wouldn't worry about the jelly right now. But come late March, you should try the jelly, and put some oranges. Would make good bird feed too when the Orioles are here.
Do you have any suggestions for how to attract birds?
I'll make a few in a minute.
Okay. I think we're ready to move on.
Okay, we're going to move on. Okay, now I'm going to talk a little bit about recording your what you see. When you record the birds that you're seeing, there's a form that we have, and this is it. And I think it's really self-explanatory. When I'm on my Christmas bird count, I really just use a blank sheet of paper. And on that blank sheet of paper, I write down when I start, I write down the date, and I write down if I'm doing it by myself and who's with me. I write down the weather conditions. And if I'm traveling, of course, I write down my mileage. But since I'm talking about feeder counters, you just need to write down your address or your GPS coordinates or something like that. Or if you choose to be a feeder counter and sit in a park instead of your house or someplace like that, you could do that. So you need to put that information down. And then you need to just write down, I just write down the first bird I see. So if the first bird I see is a mockingbird, I write down mockingbird, and then I just put a mark. And if later I see 2 mockingbirds, I put another mark. And then if I see a starling, I'll put another mark by it. And I just go on. And then at the end of the day, I take a form like this one that has a list of all those birds and transcribe from my paper. I find that easier than if I see it, then trying to find it on that list, because I can sort of remember the sequence in which I write it, but I don't always see the sequence in which it's listed on the list. So that becomes easier for me. Maybe it's just because I'm an old guy, but I think it's easier for everybody. And so that would be a thing I would make. And then if there are anything that if there are breaks in the times that you say you spend 2 hours looking at birds, but you did an hour in the morning and an hour in the evening, put on that, when you were birding and when you were not birding, and only put the time that you were really birding. So if you were in your den, but you were watching a football game most of that time, don't put the football game. You might just put till the game started and during halftime, and after the game was over, then you watch. So just put that time, and then when your information is all recorded, then you need to send that information. Now there's website information of where you need to send that. You can send that information to me. My email address is there, or you can send it, if you're in Hot Springs Village, you can send it to Nathan Charlton at the National Park Service. And if you have your address, he'll know what area you were counting in, and he can put that in the correct information. After all that information is collected for that count circle, then whoever the compiler is for that circle then will submit that information to the state compiler. And the state compiler is a man by the name of Leif Anderson. And Leif Anderson works for the National Wildlife Service up near Russellville. And he submits it to the National Audubon Society and Cornell University, or whoever the main people are that take the data and put it in a form that makes it useful for the scientists and for everybody else who wants that data, and it can be useful. And usually there's an article. I have written several articles for the paper about the results of local results for the Christmas bird count. And if you keep your eye on the paper, either the Democrat Gazette or the Sentinel Record or some of the other outlets, they usually have a story or two about the results of the Christmas bird count for our area. And you can compare your area, and they'll tell you what was the most common bird seen and that sort of thing. Okay, Paul, any other questions about recording the data and sending it off?
Let me see here. I did get a question from email. Give me just a moment. A question from Sherry. What if I see a bird I can't identify? Do I count it?
Okay, if you see a bird you can't identify, you might count it. Let's say you see a duck, but you don't know what kind of duck it is. You can say, I saw a duck, but just record it's a duck species. Or maybe you see a hawk, but you don't know. You can record the general kind of bird it is. And there's places on those forms to include things like that. Or a sparrow, there are about 40 different kinds of sparrows. There's a Lincoln sparrow and a Savannah sparrow and a house sparrow and a white-throated sparrow. You can just put sparrow. And so if you can identify it, you can generally identify it, you can put that. Sometimes you'll just not get a good look at a bird and you just have no idea what it is. And then you probably don't need to worry about identifying it. There are many times I don't identify birds. I don't see them, and so you can't count them. It's not really useful data at all. But sometimes you can say, well, I saw a blackbird species. That's a little information.
Are there any field guides or other resources for identifying birds you recommend?
Yes. And I was going to get to that, and that's the next thing. I was going to make some tips. I have some tips for you, and one of the tips I have for you is that if you have trouble identifying birds, one of the things you can do is get you a field guide. this is the field guide that I cut my teeth on, and it's still one of the best. It's the Peterson Field Guide to Eastern Birds. And the thing I like about this one is it has, in addition to showing you the birds, it has arrows on the pictures of the birds, and it shows you specific field markings that help you separate that bird from all others that are similar. And it also, this field guide just covers eastern birds, just the birds that you're apt to see in Arkansas. A more thorough birds and a more recent and probably a more popular bird guide is this one, the Sibley Guide to Birds. And I carry this one with me a lot. And nowadays I use it probably more, but Peterson's probably my favorite, even though I use that one more. Use the field guide. There's a free app called Marlin that you can get to your phone, on your phone. And I suggest you get that on your phone. And if you tell it where you are and what about the bird and when you saw it, it can really do a good job to help you identify. And you can even record its song, and it'll help you get even better knowledge of the birds.
And we've probably got, just off the top of my head, probably about 20 or more different field guides if anyone wants to get into this hobby here at the library.
Okay, that's great. That's great. Can they check those out?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, that's another tip I was going to make to you. One thing I was going to suggest to you, if you're going to be in the Christmas bird count, which is actually a week from tomorrow, that before then you practice. You don't have to wait till then and just say, okay, well, I'm going to do it, but start practicing tomorrow or the next day or the next one. You've got a full week. So come check one of those field guides out, and you can practice doing the field guide. Another tip I was going to make for you is if you don't have a feeder at your house, it might be a good idea for you to go to some local hardware store or Walmart or someplace and buy some bird seed. You can hang it up, or you can just scatter it out in your yard, and you can begin attracting birds. If you throw out some bird seed tomorrow, by next Sunday, the birds would realize it's there and they'd be coming to your yard pretty regularly. So you could do that, and I would suggest that you throw it out near a window. If next Sunday's bad and cold, you may not want to go outside. You can turn the lights out in your kitchen, say, look out the kitchen window, and if you can get close to that window with the lights out, the birds can't see you, and you can get up very close to it, and you can see them. And if you throw that out, you can get a good look at them. And if you can't get looks, I would suggest, we sometimes think you have to use binoculars to look at things that are way, way far off. But binoculars help you see 20 feet away too. And if you're new to birding, if you get real good looks, those field guides, they're good. But the funny thing is, birds don't always pose sideways to you like they drawn in the field guide. Sometimes you just see their butt or their head, or they're got their head crocked in a funny way. And I know on the sparrows, I have to see their chest to have a good idea. I can't remember what their bill has to look like or what color their feet are. And that's sometimes all you can see. But if you have binoculars and they're close by, you can get a feel for that, and then you can check back, and you'll soon become to recognize it. And even though I bird almost every day of my life, I still use my binoculars to look at birds that I see every day up close to me, and So use your binoculars. And I'm going to suggest one other thing since it's Christmas. If you want to know a Christmas gift you can get somebody, if you know a young person or an old person that doesn't have a set of binoculars or doesn't have a bird feeder or doesn't have a field guide, boy, that makes a great gift. That makes a very good gift. So that's what. Have any other questions, Paul?
Let's see. Sam asked, what kind of seed was in the sock? I haven't seen that before.
Okay, the seed that comes in a sock that those goldfinch were feeding off is a thistle. And thistle is good because the finches really like that, and squirrels don't. And that's squirrels are a big problem in your feeders, and squirrels don't like that thistle, but the little tiny songbirds really do. I use thistle some. I have a little bit of trouble with thistle spoiling and getting wet and turning rancid, and then the birds leave it. And it's I usually put some out, but I haven't had good luck with it. But a lot of people do, and you may want to try that. But I would suggest if you use thistle, use it in small amounts. Don't get a great big sock or a great big tube of it. Just buy it in little amounts and get it and see how it works. And if it goes bad, then you can put some more out if it gets wet or whatever.
And Mary mentioned sunflower. Do you have anything to say about that?
Oh, I think sunflower is probably, if I had one kind of seed or feed, sunflower seed is the absolute best, or safflower seed, it's some people call it. Yeah, it's the best. If you're going to throw some out on the ground, the one that's got millet in it, it's good, and corn is good for the doves. They like that a lot.
All right, ready to move on.
Okay. Well, I think that's pretty well what I have. If there's any other questions, if there are no other questions that we have, Paul.
Let's see here. There's one more from Kelly. Tell us about the book you recently published about birds.
Oh, well, that's a personal thing. This is the book that I recently wrote is called Mothers, Memories, and Birds. And it's about 5 generations of women and about the birds in their life and their impact. And it covers 200 years of American Southern history. And it's available on Amazon Kindle. And it was a joy to write. It was a joy to learn about birds and the women in my family and the writing of it. Well, this has been very good. I sure hope a lot of people do the Christmas bird count. And I hope you don't just do it this year. I hope you establish a Christmas tradition in your family and in your life. And I hope you do this Christmas bird count every year from now on. After this pandemic, I hope you get out and do it even bigger than just doing it at your feeder. And so I always like to end by saying 3 words: peace and birds.
Well, I think we all appreciate your passion. You just got a lot of great comments. Chris says, thanks so much, Jerry. We're excited to participate on the 20th. Brianna says, very good information, and says, wonderful presentation. So people really enjoyed it, got a lot out of it. And I look forward to talking to you again. I know we kind of maybe joked, but maybe we're serious about having a presentation about the legendary ivory-billed woodpecker. So
we'll try to work on that.
Absolutely. All right. Well, you have a great night, Jerry. Thank you for the great program, and thank you, everyone, for watching.
Thank you, Paul.